Hi, everyone. I am so excited to be here. It's another wonderful show. And this is Artist to Artist Talk Show. And my name is Adele Shortino. And our guest today is Becky Smith, a model maker. And the nice part about the whole thing is that she lives right here in Canada. And I'm so happy that I'm only about 2 hours away from her. So we've already been talking about getting together and having a tea and just sharing some stories and just being together in her studio. And I can't wait for that to happen. So I know you're very excited to have her here, and please feel free to leave some comments. And if you have any questions, go ahead and post them, and Becky will answer them for you. I'm going to go ahead and bring Becky up because I know that's who you're waiting to talk to and also hear what she has to say. Hey, Becky.
Hello, Adele.
How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I'm very pleased to be here.
Well, we're excited for you to be here, and I've just made mention that if they had any comments or questions that you'll be glad to answer them. And so tell us a little bit about yourself. I know everybody wants to hear about you.
Okay, well, I'm originally from the United Kingdom. I'm from a place called Kent, just outside of London. I moved to Canada 5 years ago, and now I work full-time as a model maker. I studied animation, actually, when I was a student back in England, and I specialized in three-dimensional and puppet making for animation. So I started off, sort of making these very small plasticine models and things like that. And that's really where my love of character sculpting came from. And I quickly realized, actually, when I was a student, that I didn't really want to be an animator. I wanted to actually make all the puppets. And I love designing characters and making quirky little people. So I've always done that. But it's only really been since I've moved to Canada that I've started to do it full time. So yeah, I mean, that's the basic background, really. I come from an animation background. Yeah.
Now, your pieces that you have here, they come in different sizes. I know I've only seen the larger pieces, but what sizes do you work in, or what size you work in?
I work in all different sizes. I think if anybody here has actually seen my work, usually you would just see the larger stuff that I have. But I do a full range. I sort of get commissions for pieces, that are sort of 7 inches, 12 inches, all the way up to very large 60-inch pieces, which
Wow.
are sort of very tall. So it's a huge range that I actually work in. Although I think most people seem to think, if they know my work, that I only work with the larger, but I don't. I work with all different kinds of sizes.
Yeah, and I know we were talking right before we started the interview is packaging is very important for these pieces.
It's hugely important because of the material that we use, obviously. I should imagine that there's some people out there watching that use very similar materials to the material I use, which is resin. It's a resin putty, which I use to make all of these characters with, which is fantastic. It's very, very solid and hard wearing, but it can break. It can break. So packaging is exceptionally important. I have had issues with that fairly recently, actually. So yes, if anybody is looking to sort of send models like these, then packaging is exceptionally important. Yes,
I'm sure. Well, I know they're anxious to see more of your work, and I'll go ahead and bring up the slide presentation that we prepared for them.
Okay.
And so I'm going to do this right now and get this up for us. It's really amazing. Your work is
Thank you.
Outstanding. I'm going to give you the full screen on this. Now, when we do the full screen, I just want to let everybody know that we still can see your comments, and also you'll be able to hear Becky's voice. So here is Miss Becky.
Hello.
So you look, I was just going to mention something. You also like to dress up when you're working.
Oh, I do. I often wear some very elaborate outfits when I'm actually sculpting. I'm a big fan of a Swedish designer called Eva Ivala. And she just does these most amazing, beautiful sort of fairy tale type dresses, a bit raggedy, which suits me quite well. So I'm always dressing up. When I sculpt, I just find it helps inspire me. So yes.
Well, that's wonderful. That's something that I think that we all need to keep in mind. So
I always recommend that you do that.
Well, here we go.
Okay.
Whoops, sorry. I think this was our first one here, little guy.
Yes, this one here is Oliver. Oliver is actually behind me, so when you come back to see me when talking, you'll see Oliver in the background.
Okay.
He was one of the first that I was using in this material. I had not really used this resin before I came out to Canada. So this was one of the first pieces that I made when I was out here using this resin and this material. Oliver is a jester. He's a court jester, sort of medieval court jester. He's not very good at his job. So he's constantly being fired and having to go from job to job. It's sort of in the family, all of his family were jesters, and he's sort of been forced to carry on in the family trade, but he's absolutely appalling at it, and is constantly being made to move from castle to castle and place to place. So he's rather dejected and a bit sad.
Oh, well, poor Oliver. Well, what inspired you to do Oliver?
I've always been a big fan of the kind of the medieval time period. I just think it's so fantastic that it's so dark, but at the same time, all the characters could be sort of very vibrant, but there was always this kind of underlying, darkness to it. And what was a dark period in history, of course. So I just love them. I think you can get some really rich characters from them, and Oliver was inspired by that.
Well, he's wonderful. How big is he?
Oliver is about 40 inches tall. He's
okay.
About 40 inches.
Well, he's a big guy.
He is a big guy. He is. He was when I started to move into the larger characters. I think he was one of the first.
Well, he's really wonderful. We'll get to see him again later.
Okay, this is Petric. Petric. Again, he is kind of, I think you're going to see this in most of my work. There's like a real kind of theme running through it. I just love the medieval hoods or the costumes. So you'll see that a lot in my work. Petric was actually the very first character I made in this material. So he's very, very special to me. I actually made him for a dark crystal contest that was running a few years ago. And they were just asking everybody to make sculptures. So I took that as an opportunity to use this new material to make this character. Unfortunately, he didn't win, but I adore him anyway, and he's very special for that reason. It was fun making him, and he was a big learning curve for me because I was new to this material. So he holds a special place in my heart as well.
Well, he's wonderful, and he's about 40 inches as well.
He is. He's about between 35 and 40 inches, Petric.
Okay.
And now, his name. Sorry, I should point out. A lot of the time with names, I'll sort of take them from places I visited, and Petric actually comes from a little village in Cornwall in England, and it's actually called Little Petric, and it's a beautiful little village, and that's where his name comes from.
Well, he's very interesting. Now, do you ever do mix like fabric with your pieces, or you just strictly stay with this resin to create everything?
No, I just stick with resin. I do get asked this question sometimes because there are so many fantastic mixed media artists out there, and they do some fantastic stuff. But for me personally, one of my favorite things to sculpt are actually the clothing. I love to sculpt wrinkles, and so that would take away a lot of the pleasure for me personally. So if you see a piece of my work, everything is sculpted. Everything. I don't use any other materials.
Okay. Well, he's wonderful.
Thank you. This piece is Alyshas Gallery, which if there's anybody here from Quebec in Canada, you will know that this is actually a French-Canadian folk tale about a group of loggers who, I think I've got this right, that they want to actually travel back to their families during the winter from the north. And in order to do this, they make a pact with the devil. So this is a piece that's actually about that folk tale. Again, this is all in resin. Some people think it's bronze, but I just painted it to look bronze. Now, I keep going on about this is the first one that I made in this material. This piece here is the very first one that I tried with this material. This piece was a huge learning curve. It took a long time to do. I had to make the boat first. I had to sculpt every single character inside the boat, which was tricky to do. And yes, it's that was hard work, that one, simply because the material was so new to me. I'd not used it before, and yeah, I was quite happy with how it turned out. There's a few things I would do differently now, but yes, it's a significant piece because it's the very first piece that I used with this material.
Well, it's wonderful, and all the details that you have in there, and also the emotion that the faces are showing. You really, especially that little guy hanging over there on the end there.
Yeah, I think it is something that's very big with me, and I don't know. I can't actually speak for people that look at my work, but with me, I like to get across, something in their personality, something, emotional there. So if somebody can see something like that in my work, then I'm always very happy because that is what I strive to do. So
yeah, really a great piece, and also it tells the tale, which is nice too.
It does. Okay, this is probably one of my favorite pieces that I have made personally. This is Rattius, the mobile librarian. Rattius, again, he's another medieval type character who is a very quiet, very simple creature who just adores literature. He loves to read, but he also wants to share it with the rest of the world. So he's built himself a little bookcase, which you can see on his back, packed with different books. He also has a bell hanging from his hood, and he'll then go onto the cobbled streets, and people can actually loan books from him. They use the bell. They can ring the bell just to let him know that they're behind him, looking at his bookshelf. And as you can see, he does have a thing for jam sandwiches, so he always has a jam sandwich with him wherever he goes.
I was going to ask you if that's a peanut butter jelly.
It's sorry, jelly. If you're from the States, it's it's his favorite food. It's what he tends to live on. So it's the first thing he does before he leaves the house to go and lend his books out. He always makes a jam sandwich for himself.
Yeah. Oh, he's great, and I love the way you have the texture on his shirt there. I mean, it just looks pleated. It looks wonderful. That's great.
That's very kind, and this goes back to what I was saying before. I think I see some just amazing artists. They do these wonderful sculptural pieces, and then they'll have all this fabric. And I always say to people, there's two reasons that I don't do it. One is because I'm actually not very good at sewing, so I just don't think they would look as good as I would like. And second of all, I just enjoy it. I love sculpting fabrics, and it's my favorite thing about actually sculpting.
Yeah, really great piece.
Thank you.
I love this guy. He makes me laugh.
This is Ralphie, the One Bunny Band. I'd had this idea playing around in my mind for a while. Just I can't remember. I think I'd seen some, the one band piece, the one man band. And I'd always loved sculpting rabbits. I always have liked sculpting rabbits. So I decided to make Ralphie. And he was a one bunny band, and he just sort of goes about the countryside playing to people and busking, and he's a very happy. It's so funny because I think a lot of the pieces that I have, they have kind of a sadness running through them. Ralphie, not so much. Ralphie's just quite a contented, happy chap who just wants to play his music. He's more than happy to do that.
Did you sculpt the bells on him?
I did. I sculpted everything.
Those are amazing.
Thank you. And let me tell you that sculpting that accordion was, my word.
What a challenge. Becky.
It was. I know. I do tend to sort of get these things in my brain, and then when I start doing it, I'm just thinking, why did I think of that? But I plowed on through, and it was tricky. But this is something else, Adele, and I know that most sculptors would agree with me. Every single piece, you're learning something new, and there's always something to learn. So again, I learned a lot from making that piece, and obviously if I was to do another one now, I would do things slightly differently, and I'd have a better understanding of sculpting an accordion, but it was my first one. So it's a learning curve all the time. You're constantly learning.
Yeah, he's fabulous. And I think that's true no matter how long you've been sculpting, or whether it's sculpting or doing cloth dolls or mixed media, you always either you're improving or you're learning something new, or it's always evolving. Always. And this is the fun part about it. I think if you ever got to that point where you just thought, there's nothing else I could learn, how boring that would be. It would just take the enjoyment. Every single piece that we make as an artist, that's what's exciting about it. You don't know what's going to be around the corner when you're working. Exactly.
Discovering new techniques, all kinds of stuff, and that's the fun part about what we do, I think.
I agree. I absolutely agree. Even though sometimes we go in there and we're thinking, okay, what am I going to be dealing with now?
That's the fun.
The
fun. Okay, this is little Eliza. Now she, when I was talking before about how I make models on different scales, Eliza's a very small piece. She's only about 12 inches tall.
Wow, she is tiny.
Yeah, so she was very, very small, and she was just so fun to make. I made her for a lady that just wanted a little pixie. She wanted me to make a pixie for her. So I did. She didn't have a huge amount of space in her house, so she asked me for a little piece, which is what I did here for her. And luckily, because I now live in Canada, this photograph I was able to take outside in the snow, real snow. And yes, she was so happy with her, and she was lots of fun to make. She didn't take very long because she was so tiny.
Yeah.
She was fun to make, Eliza.
She's really cute. Oh my goodness. This one makes me laugh. Georgie girl.
Yes. Georgie was a lot more cartoony than I would usually do, I think. I'm very kind of into, all the detail on the face, I like doing lots of wrinkles and stuff like that. And Georgie doesn't really have that. So she was kind of a break from what I would ordinarily do. And she was just a very cute figurine to make. And it was nice to kind of have a break from the usual stuff that I do. So, she was nice to do.
Yeah. Very nice.
Oh, this is
I love him. I love him. I love his look and everything.
This is Gilbert. Again, another medieval piece. I've just got this thing about, I just love all the costumes. I often sort of look through books and look at old medieval. I love all the hoods and things like that. So Gilbert's story is quite sad. He was scorned when he was younger. He lost the love of his life, and he's never ever got over the fact that he lost the love of his life. So he spends his days writing poetry. This is why, if you can see hanging off under his hands, he's got books here. These are his notebooks full of poetry. And I don't think you can see in that book, but he also has pockets stuffed with scrolls of poetry, which he sells. And he sells them to people that want to woo their love. And he does that in the hope that, you know, they can win the love that he never had. So it's he's very sad. He's probably one of my favorite characters, just mainly because I feel so sorry for him. And when I started to sculpt him, I always start with the head when I'm actually sculpting. So you know, I kind of get to know them while I'm sculpting them, and I just felt really sorry for him.
Well, Becky, what kind of paints do you use on these? Because they're very brilliant. They're, you know, they show up very well.
It's just a standard acrylic paint.
Okay.
I don't make them. I think you and I touched on this when we spoke before, Adele, but I don't usually make them to go outside.
Right.
I can make them to go outside, but I obviously wouldn't use the same paints that I use for indoor ones. So this is just acrylic paint that I use. Mm-hmm. It does take me some time to actually paint some of the larger ones, because I do tend to use quite small brushes when I'm doing it, just to try and get in as much detail as possible.
Do you do any airbrushing on any of them?
No, I don't. This is another question that I get asked, and I've had lots of people say to me, you know, Becky, you should be airbrushing, and I have thought about it lots and lots, but for me, I guess I'm an old stickler. I just, you know, if I found something that works for me, and I enjoy doing that, so I will look into the airbrushing, I think, at some point, but at the moment, no, I don't use an airbrush.
Yeah, well, you do really well with the tones and getting the different highlights in there. He's just wonderful.
Thank you so much. Okay, this is Bertie the Birdman. At the time, he was the largest sculpture that I had made. He is about 58 inches tall. So he's quite a big fellow. The reason I decided to do him back in England, although I'm pretty sure that you have them in United States and probably Canada as well, we have this competition where people make flying contraptions. They'll go to a pier and just jump off, and it's a competition to see which flying contraption will get them the furthest. So it's you know, it's something people do for fun, obviously. So I just always thought it was such a quirky thing to do. So I decided to make Bertie here. Bertie's quite a serious Birdman competitor, and he's constantly in his garden shed making all kinds of things. And he makes these wings which are strapped onto him because he's going to enter the Birdman competition. So that was his character. This was, as I say, the biggest piece that I'd made. The wings were, I'd never done anything like that before. So I think it was about 178 individual feathers that I sculpted for him.
Wow.
Which was a lot. It was a lot.
That is a lot.
And then, you can see the picture on the top right there is me painting up his cobblestone base that I made for him as well.
Yeah. Well, did he win the competition, by the way?
Of course he did.
Oh,
Yes.
of course.
He's a winner. Well, the reason he is because, you know, he takes it seriously. A lot of the other competitors, you know, they do it for fun, you know, but Bertie's very serious about it. So, you know, his engineering is quite precise, and, you know, he knows what he's doing.
Well, that's good.
Okay, this is just to show that sometimes I get asked to do all kinds of stuff, and this was actually it's this from you can see there. It's a double portrait that I was asked to do of somebody's parents, and it was actually cast in bronze after this as well. So they were quite big, as you could probably see there.
Yes, they are big. That's hard. That's hard to capture somebody's portrait personality in a portrait.
It was a challenge because I'd not done sort of a realistic portrait in clay before. So it was again, you know, it was another challenge, but this is what made it so enjoyable to work on. I mean, it kind of took away from the creative part in some ways that I like, you know, because you can't make up anything, which I like to do, but it gave a whole set of different challenges, and that was, you know, very, very tight, obviously, because it has to look like them. So it was fantastic to work on. It was fantastic for me. I really enjoyed it. I you know, been asked a couple of times to do others as well. I'm not a portrait sculptor, but you know, I do it from time to time. And
well, they're great. I'm sure they loved it. They've already received them.
Yes, they received the portrait. It was actually a gift from their son, who wanted them, and it was fantastic because I had just come to Canada. And I got to meet them, so they came out because I had to take photographs of them and all kinds of things. And they were so lovely. They were so sweet, and they were really happy with it as well. So that's always good.
That is good. That's good.
Okay, this is Mr. Snickleway. He's one of the latest pieces that I made. He's the biggest piece that I have made as well. Mr. Snickleway stands just over 60 inches, so he's a little bit taller than I am with his hat on, and he was definitely the biggest one that I made. He was made for somebody that wanted him in a music room that they had, where they give kind of small concerts. So they wanted a piece that would be, you know, holding out a bowl so people could put donations in if they want to. So I decided to create Mr. Snickleway, who is sort of a musical manager. But his acts are all a bit tired, and he doesn't really make that much money from it. So again, you know, he's another piece that has a little bit of sadness to him. You know, his glory days are over. And, you know, he's kind of hunched over, and he looks a bit worn and a bit more drab than he used to. And yeah, he just sort of takes life as it comes. But he's quite a sad soul, really. He tries his best. But I loved making him. I really enjoyed making him. One of the nice things that I did with him, I don't know if you may have noticed, but I have a particular kind of color scheme that I tend to stay in with a lot of my pieces. And with Mr. Snickleway, I put some teal in there, which is a color I don't usually use. So yeah, it was kind of playing around with different colors with him. And again, the customer was really, really pleased with him. I was happy that they were happy. Yeah, he was fun. He was big.
Yeah, he has a great expressions. His eyes are just amazing. He looks so lifelike.
Yeah, I think one of the things they wanted, they said to me is, you know, we don't want something that you know is too grim. It needs to be quite kind of smiley. So I did that, but kind of keeping with the kind of character that I like to make. So he definitely has this sadness about him, but he's cheerful out front, and he's got a nice smile, and everybody likes him.
Yeah, he's great.
Thank you.
And here you are with the whole gang.
Yes, there I am with all of the gang.
Yeah, you can really see the difference in the sizes now.
You can. I don't have any really small pieces there, but yes, you can definitely see the size that I do. There's no restriction, because I think I make all of these pieces, and then I will have people contact me and ask me, could I make them something? And the first thing I ask is what size would you like? Because everybody has different budgets, everybody has different needs. So,
right.
As I say, I think a lot of people think I just make the larger pieces, but I make all kinds.
Yeah, they're really. It's nice when you see them all grouped together like that.
Yeah, they do form quite a funny looking band of characters, don't they? And as you can imagine, whenever I'm showing them, children absolutely love them.
I'm sure.
I have to admit, I get lots of children that kind of want to wander over, and sometimes I think the best compliment that I get from people is when they say to me, I'm expecting them to turn around and talk to me.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. And I'm sure the children enjoy the stories if when you tell them about the different pieces.
They do. And
they're great.
For me, it's like the story is, it's one of the most important parts of making them. As I say, I'll sort of formulate an idea, and then they start to come alive. And I hope that comes across once I've actually finished the piece. They all have a story.
Well, they do. And they all have their own personalities, and you can see that. And then I wanted to point out that Becky had a nice write-up in the A4 Artistic e-magazine. It was the fall issue for 2019, and it's still available if you're interested, and there's a little bit more information about Becky. So I did put up the link if you would like to go in there and purchase it. Now, I'll also put the link in the comments after the show, so you can go in there and take a look. We also will be posting more information on Becky. Take a look at her website. You have a great Facebook also page with all your pieces too, Becky. So I posted that as well. And I know this is kind of hard for them to take it off the screen, so I will put it in the comments after the talk show. And also, I put this up for you because I know you're getting ready to go to a show here in Quebec, and I thought maybe you'd like to share some information about the show that you will be attending.
Yes, it is the sculpture show running on the 4th, 5th, and 6th of October this year. It's in St. Hyacinthe, which is in Quebec, Canada. And it's a 3-day show which shows sort of all kinds of different sculpture. There's lots of bronze there, lots of fine art. I'll be there. We have a wonderful artist in Quebec called Etienne, and he makes these fantastic sculptures from recycled materials. There's all kinds of artists there. One of my favorites, she is a fantastic bronze sculptor, so it's lots of figurative stuff there as well. So yeah, if anybody is about over those dates and in that area, then yes, it'd be lovely to see you there.
Yes, well, hopefully somebody is in the area and will come by and meet you. In fact, if I get a chance, I will drive on over. I'm looking forward to meeting you and to seeing your pieces in person. Well, this was just great, Becky. I appreciate you sharing this information with us. And we have, let's see, Deborah came in and she said she loved all your characters and expressions.
Thank you, Deborah. I hope so. It's this goes back to what I was saying. I always start making the head pieces, and from that they kind of I always say they talk to me, and they do. They start telling you about themselves and their personality, and it's almost like they kind of guide you when you're sculpting them. And so yeah, I'm glad that you enjoy the expressions they have, and hopefully you can see a bit of their personality there as well.
Well, you can see their personalities. I know, Becky, you wanted to share some additional information now that the slide presentation is over. You had, I believe, some things in your little studio there that you wanted to show.
Yes,
so,
I just.
So what I'll do is I'll give you the screen so you can have the full screen.
Okay. Yes, I just wanted, for anybody that's interested, I always like to talk through the actual process I go when I'm actually making these pieces. So it's just to show you roughly the kind of materials that I use. So for instance, this is the thing that I always start with, which I'm going to show to the camera. You probably all know what this is. It's just a chicken wire that you get from any hardware store. And this is what I use to sculpt and make, the shape of the head that I want. So, yep, I have a basic head structure there. And then from that, what I will do is wrap it in masking tape. The other material that I then use, I'm just going to show you a headpiece that I have here. So this is a basic head armature for one of these pieces that I would make. So you can probably see just under here is all the chicken wire. So I'll make the chicken wire structure. Then I will cover with just plain masking tape that I use. And then this stuff here, which is actually just a car body fiberglass. Very hard, very sturdy. And the material that I use to sculpt adheres to it really, really well. So that's what I will use. And then this is actually the material that I use. That I get this is probably the question that I get asked the most is what material. Up here in Canada, it's this stuff here, which is the Abracadabra Sculpt and Smooth. It comes in two parts, so there's a resin and a hardener. In fact, I've got two balls here. So this is the resin and hardener. You mix those together, and you have about sort of hour and a half to 2 hours before that starts to cure. So this is what I will do to actually sculpt my pieces. So yes, I just wanted to show you quickly the materials that I use. To actually make the bodies themselves, I will use steel tubing and things like that to actually build up the body. But this is how I make usually the head, which is what I always start with.
I believe you had some books also that you wanted to share, Becky. You had said something.
Yes, I did. This is another question I get asked a lot is because I have a particular theme, I suppose, if you like, with the work that I make of my own characters. And the thing that people always kind of pick up on is the fact that if you all know about an artist called Brian Froud, which I'm sure you do.
Yes.
Yes, I get asked that a lot. Is Brian Froud a big influence of yours? And yes, he is. I am a huge fan of his, and it all really stems from this book here. This book here is called Master Snickup's Cloak by Alexander Theroux, and it's actually illustrated by Brian Froud. And this particular copy was bought for me by my father when I was very, very young. And to be honest, this book is really where I got most of my inspiration from when I was growing up. You can see here, the illustrations are just absolutely beautiful. So whenever I need inspiration, these are the books that I pore over. There's John Bauer as well. And these are fantastic books for inspiration. So if anybody is struggling, this is something I say to people as well. Sit yourself in a nice comfy chair, get yourself some books, pour through illustrations, stories, I love all the old fairy tales, so the Grimm's fairy tales, which is actually illustrated by another favourite of mine, which is Arthur Rackham, another English illustrator. And so, yeah, you could probably see from all the colour schemes as well that, you know, this, I just adore this. I just think there's something that's kind of a bit forlorn about it, a bit dark, that kind of runs through all of this, and it just really, really appeals to me. I think it's because maybe, you know, some of the best characters personally that I feel, they do tend to have something quite sad about them.
Yes.
So this is why I think I like the characters that, you know, they've passed all their glory years and they're all a bit, you know, a bit sad, a bit dejected, and that color scheme definitely lends itself to that.
Yeah, well, they're just wonderful. We have Rita. She's asking about eyes. I guess on how you make them.
The eyes, Rita, it's exactly the same as the rest of it. I sculpt them. I just sculpt them in exactly the same material as this. Then I paint them, and then I always, you can see on Basil here, which is another character I made recently. I just put sort of varnish over them to give them that kind of glassy look. But yes, I make them, and everything that I have on the model is sculpted in exactly the same way, same material, painted in the same way. Oh, Remy, I can see there. Remy Tuck is saying Rackham is one of her favourites too. Yes, he's always been a massive, massive favourite of mine. Again, you know, that wonderful dark aura that he has about his work that is just captivating. And if anybody knows Arthur Rackham, you know, you can say that nobody draws trees quite like Arthur Rackham. He has this way of making these gnarly, dark trees. And if you don't know Arthur Rackham, I would highly recommend looking him up.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I see that you have Ollie behind you.
I do. This one here. This is Oliver here.
Yes.
There. And yes, he's very special to me. Again, you know, with Oliver, he was, you know, a learning curve because, but actually you can see there's Petric as well. So here's Petric, and this one here is Oliver. So these two, because I'd made the Alyshas Gallery, you know, the French-Canadian folktale piece with this material. But then these two were the first when I started to actually experiment with making larger, just character pieces. So everything was new, you know, painting them and doing all of that. So they're special to me. They still live here in my workshop with me.
Well, you have to have company, right?
Absolutely. You know, you're sort of an artist. You work alone. You have to have people to talk to. So these poor guys here, you know, they hear all my troubles and strife, and yeah, they keep me company. They do.
Well, we have such long winters here in Canada, so.
Oh, don't we?
Yes, we discussed this yesterday, how long the winters are. So it's great that you have some company in there.
Oh yes, absolutely. I try to make the workshop as cozy as possible, and these guys really help. They really help. You know, I love having them around, and you and I talked about this before, but actually saying goodbye to pieces sometimes can be difficult. You know, when somebody wants to buy one, which is, yes, of course it's lovely, but you know, especially when you spend so long working on them, which is what I do. You know, some of them do take a fair time to work on, and you feel like you know them so well. It's like saying goodbye to a friend. You know,
Sure.
They go, and you know, it's quite sad. So
Yeah.
I quite like the fact that these ones are here.
Well, we are looking forward to seeing more of your creations. I'm sure you've got lots of characters floating around in your head, ready to.
I have, yeah.
Oh, I'm sure you do. We look forward to seeing more of your work, Becky. Thank you so much for your time and sharing the information. just giving us a little bit more insight about who you are and your work, and we look forward to seeing more of it.
Thank you very much, Adele. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you for having me here, and thank you to everybody that tuned in and was listening to me waffle on about this. But yes, thank you, Adele. It's been a pleasure.
Well, I appreciate everybody stopping by and making your comments. And this will also be replaying if you didn't get a chance to see the first part of it. And if you have any questions after the show, Becky will come in and answer whatever question you may have. Thank you again, everyone, for being here. And we just are so delighted to be able to offer these shows to you and have you meet the artist. So we will see you the next time. Thanks for stopping by, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.